You won't believe the first words Karen screamed at me. You don't belong here? Sell this house before we seize it. Those words weren't whispered in anger. She screamed them from the sidewalk in front of my porch, loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. Porch lights flickered on, blinds shifted. Neighbors peeked out. That was the night I realized this wasn't going to be just a property dispute. This was going to be a battle for dignity, memory, and family honor. You see, the house I bought wasn't just a house. It was my grandfather's old home. A 2-story craftsman, with faded blue shutters and a porch swing that creaked like an old song. I grew up spending summers there, fishing at the lake behind the property, running barefoot in the grass with cousins, listening to my grandmother's stories on the porch while fireflies lit up the evening. When my grandfather passed, the house sat empty for years. The HOA nearby had grown like ivy, swallowing every property in sight. But this one? This house sat just outside their boundaries, free, independent. That's exactly why I bought it back. Not for money. Not for prestige. But for pride. For memory. For family. Karen didn't see it that way. Karen was the self-appointed queen of the HOA. Perfectly pressed pantsuits, sharp voice like a police siren, and a clipboard glued to her hand. She was the type who inspected people's lawns with a ruler. The moment I moved in, she showed up at my door. No welcome basket. No neighborly handshake. Just a demand. You'll need to submit your paint colors to the HOA for approval, she snapped. I blinked. Ma'am, this house isn't in your HOA. Her eyes narrowed. All houses in this community must comply. Otherwise, you lower our property values. And that's when I felt the first spark of anger. She wasn't asking. She was declaring, like my family's memories, my dignity meant nothing. Over the next few weeks, things got stranger. First came the letters. Slipped under my door, unsigned, but stamped with HOA. Letterhead. Failure to register your vehicle will result in fines. Your lawn does not meet community standards. Your home's shutters must be repainted within 30 days. I crumpled them up and tossed them. This wasn't their jurisdiction. But then came the whispers. Neighbors began avoiding me. One older man muttered, Karen says you're planning to turn this into a rental, that you'll bring trouble. Then came Karen herself again. One night, I caught her in my yard with a flashlight, pointing at my fence. What are you doing? I barked, stepping onto the porch. She didn't even flinch. This fence is 6 inches taller than HOA regulations allow. You'll need to bring it down. My fists clenched. It's not your fence. Not your rules. Her smile was ice cold. We'll see about that. And oh, we did see. The next escalation came fast. I got a letter claiming the deed to my house was invalid, that my purchase had overlooked mandatory HOA jurisdiction. It was nonsense. The county clerk had confirmed everything. But that didn't stop the HOA from mailing me fake fine notices, thousands of dollars, and then, one Saturday morning, the ultimate humiliation. I was on my porch, fixing the swing that squeaked when Karen marched up with 2 board members. They didn't knock. They didn't ask. They just stood there like an invading army. You're destroying this community, Karen shouted, loud enough for the whole block. If you don't comply, we'll seize this property by force. My heart pounded. Neighbors stopped to stare. A child clutched his mother's hand. An old veteran down the street shook his head. I wanted to scream back, but instead I just said one thing. This house is my family's. You will not take it. Karen's face turned red as a stoplight. This isn't over, she hissed, and she stormed away. That night, I sat alone on the porch. The swing creaked softly. I thought of my grandfather, of how he built this home with his own 2 hands. I thought of my grandmother, who told me once, a house isn't just wood and nails. It's dignity. It's memory. I swore right then. I wouldn't let Karen erase that. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The very next day, I found a notice taped to my door. In bold red letters, it read, Final warning. Vacate the property or face HOA seizure. and just as I ripped it down, I saw the flash of police lights rolling slowly down the street. That night, when I saw the police lights creep past my house, I thought maybe Karen had already gone too far, but no officer came to my door. No one knocked. They just circled once, slowly, like they were watching, like they were waiting, and I knew in my gut Karen had made a call. The next morning, I went into town for breakfast at the diner. It's the same one I went to with my grandfather as a kid, the same one where the waitress still remembers my family's name. But that morning, things felt different. People stared. Whispered. When I walked past a booth, I caught a man mutter, "There goes the troublemaker." Troublemaker. I was restoring my grandfather's house, not tearing anything down. That's when it hit me. Karen wasn't just bothering me with letters and late-night inspections. She was poisoning the well. By the end of the week, it got worse. My nephew came over to help me cut the grass. He's just 14. A good kid. Loves fishing, just like I did at his age. As he pushed the mower, a group of neighborhood kids walked by and started jeering. "HOA reject," one of them yelled. "Your uncle's house is going to get bulldozed." Another shouted. I saw my nephew's face fall, and I felt something twist deep in my chest. When I asked him later if he wanted to come back, he shook his head. Not if she's going to make everyone hate us. It wasn't just kids. My mother, who's in her 70s, came by one evening. She hadn't seen the house since my grandfather passed. When she stepped onto the porch, I saw tears in her eyes. She touched the doorframe, smiled faintly, and whispered, "He loved this house so much," before I could respond. Karen's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Well, isn't this precious?" We both turned. Karen was standing at the edge of the driveway with two other HOA board members, arms crossed, faces smug. "This property doesn't belong to you," Karen sneered. "You're squatting in a house that drags the whole neighborhood down." My mother gasped. "How dare you?" But I put a hand on her arm. I didn't want her blood pressure spiking because of this witch. "Leave," I told Karen. My voice was steady. Karen smirked. "Oh, we'll leave. But not for long. You'll see." As they walked away, my mother whispered, "What if she actually can take it? What if she ruins everything?" I looked at the porch swing, at the chipped blue shutters, at my grandfather's old oak tree in the yard. "No," I said softly. "This house is ours, and no one takes it from us." But Karen didn't stop. She doubled down. A week later, I received an envelope that froze my blood. Inside was a notice of lien. It claimed I owed the HOA $14,800 in unpaid fines. Unpaid fines. On a house not even in their jurisdiction. It was fake. I knew it was fake. But it looked real enough to scare someone who didn't know better. It even had a forged county stamp. When I showed it to the clerk's office, they confirmed it. Fraudulent. But here's the thing, fraudulent or not. It had already been filed in HOA records, and Karen was using it as ammo. The harassment went public. She called a neighborhood, meeting right on the lawn across from my house. Loudspeakers, folding chairs, the whole show. I watched from my porch as people gathered. Karen stood at the front like some dictator, waving papers in the air. "This man thinks he's above the law." She shouted, "He refuses to pay dues. He refuses to follow the rules. And because of him, our property values are dropping." Boos, murmurs, a few sympathetic glances, but mostly eyes filled with suspicion. She kept going. "He's freeloading off our community while the rest of us pay. That's not fair. That's not right." Then she did it. She raised the so-called lien. "This is proof. We've filed against him. If he doesn't comply, we will seize his property. By force, if necessary." My hands were shaking, but I couldn't stay silent. "This house isn't yours to seize." I shouted, "This house was built by my grandfather before your HOA even existed. It's not under your control. It never was, and it never will be." Gasps. Some people clapped. But Karen? Karen just smiled, and she said 6 words that sent chills down my spine. "Then we'll see you in court." That night, I barely slept every creak of the porch. Every flicker of the streetlight, I imagined it was Karen plotting. I even dreamed of men in suits chaining my grandfather's door shut. But the worst moment came. It was just before dawn. I woke up to pounding. Not on my door. On my windows. I jumped up, pulled the curtain back, and saw 2 sheriff's deputies outside. Flashlights in hand, I opened the door cautiously. "Sir," one said, "we received a call that you were trespassing in this home, that it doesn't belong to you." My stomach dropped. Karen again? I showed them my deed, my ID, everything. One of them sighed, clearly annoyed. We figured, this isn't the first false call from that HOA. And as they left, red and blue lights flashing across the neighborhood, I noticed Karen standing at the end of her driveway, arms crossed, a smirk on her face. She wasn't even hiding anymore. This was war. The next day, I decided to fight back. I went down to the county clerk's office, pulled every map, every boundary line, every historical record of the property. I made copies, stacks of them, because if Karen wanted a war, she'd get one. But it wouldn't be on her terms. It would be on mine. That evening, just as I was organizing the paperwork on my dining table, my phone buzzed. A neighbor whispered into the receiver, "Be careful. Karen's planning something bigger. She says if the law won't take your house, the HOA will do it themselves. By force." And as I hung up the phone, headlights flashed outside. Not 1 car, but 3. They stopped in front of my house, engines running. And in the dark, I saw shadows step out. When those 3 cars pulled up in front of my house, I froze. Engines rumbled low in the dark. Headlights cut across the porch. Shadows stepped out, tall, broad, deliberate. And then I saw her, Karen, standing in the middle like she was some kind of general leading troops. Clipboard in hand, chin raised. Behind her were 5 men, all HOA board members, suits, ties, grim expressions. I stepped onto the porch, my grandfather's porch, and I shouted over the hum of engines, "What do you think you're doing?" Karen smirked. "We're here to enforce the rules. You've ignored warnings, refused to pay fines, and resisted community orders. This is your last chance. Hand over the keys." My heart pounded. "You don't own this house?" I yelled. "It's not part of your HOA. You have no power here." Karen's smirk twisted into rage. "We'll seize you by force if we have to." Neighbors had come outside. Porch lights flickered on up and down the street. People stood in their yards, whispering, gasping. And that's when I did something Karen didn't expect. I raised my voice and said, "Everyone listen, this is harassment. This is trespassing. And tonight, it ends." I held up a folder thick with papers. The county records, the maps, the deed. Everything proving this house has never been under HOA jurisdiction. Not once, not ever. I opened the folder, waving it like a banner. And I have something else to evidence. Proof of the fraudulent lien they filed against me. Proof of every fake notice. Proof of every false police call. All of it. Karen's face drained of color. Her little army shifted uneasily. Lies. She shrieked. "He's lying." But I wasn't finished. Tomorrow morning, my attorney is filing charges. Fraud, harassment, abuse of authority. Every ounce of corruption will be exposed. And when it is, every one of you involved will answer for it. And then the sound that made Karen crumble. A police siren. 2 cruisers rolled up. Lights flashing red and blue across the neighborhood. The same deputies who came before stepped out. One of them shook his head, muttering, "Not again." He turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you and your board members need to leave. Right now." Karen screamed. "We have rights. He's ruining everything." The deputy held up a hand. "No, ma'am. What you're doing is harassment. You've been warned before. Do it again, and you'll be the one in handcuffs." Karen lost it. She stomped, shouted, flailed her arms like a child mid-tantrum. "You don't understand. He doesn't belong here. This house is mine to control." The deputies ignored her. One of them turned to me. Sir, if you want to pursue charges, we'll support it. We've got a record of every false report she's made. Neighbors began whispering. A few even clapped quietly. One older man shouted, "Leave him alone, Karen." Her own support base crumbled right in front of her, and for the first time, I saw it, fear in Karen's eyes. The very next week, we had a community meeting. But this time, it wasn't Karen at the podium. It was me. With the county clerk and my lawyer by my side, the room was packed. Folding chairs filled, people standing along the walls. Karen sat in the front row, arms crossed, face red. I laid out everything. The deed, the maps, the proof. Then my lawyer revealed the kicker. Evidence of Karen misusing HOA funds for personal expenses. Thousands of dollars siphoned away. Gasps filled the room. Murmurs spread like wildfire, and when Karen tried to speak, people shouted her down. Enough, Karen. Resign already. You don't speak for us? Her face twisted with fury. She screamed, I built this community. You'll regret this. But her words fell flat, because the truth was out, and everyone knew it. Karen was forced to resign. The fraudulent lien was wiped clean. And the HOA? They issued a written apology. But more important than all of, that was what happened afterward. Neighbors who once avoided me began stopping by, offering handshakes, sharing stories of how Karen had bullied them too. One woman whispered, "Thank you. We were too scared to stand up to her." And my mother. When she sat on the porch swing with me, her hand resting on mine, she said softly, "Your grandfather would be proud. It was worth more than any legal victory." Now when I sit on that porch, I don't just hear the creak of old wood. I hear memory. I hear dignity. I hear freedom. Karen tried to erase that. Tried to claim something that was never hers. But in the end, truth won. Older viewers will understand this. Sometimes standing your ground isn't just about land or houses. It's about respect. It's about protecting what your family built, what they loved, what they passed down. Bullies come in many forms, neighbors, HOAs, even people in power. But when you fight with truth and dignity, they can't take what really matters. If you've ever had an HOA nightmare, or a neighbor who thought they could control your life, share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear it, because every time we speak up, we remind people like Karen they don't own us.